All right, future Cat here is jumping in really fast to make a brief PSA before we get started watching the video. I was doing the editing on this one and realizing that I wanted to make it really clear to everybody before we begin that this video is talking about karma specifically as it pertains to the way the concept is being used among the modern spiritual or metaphysical community. It's not intended to address or talk about how karma is used in a traditional religious sense of the word, as it applies to Buddhism and people who are using it as a part of their religious practices. I feel like it's really important to make that distinction. I don't intend to cover religion as a part of the discussions for this channel, mostly because people's religious convictions are very sacred to them, and they're also very dogmatic, which is not at all what I do. I question literally everything. So I don't intend to touch on like fundamental religious topics at all. This video is intended to talk about how the idea of karma is being used within the metaphysical or spiritual community in a more modern sense. So I just wanted to make that super clear before we get into it. And now I will go ahead and just out of here, and you can go back to listening to the cat from 2 days ago. Okay. Bye. Is someone leaving your life? Oh, that karma must be over. Somebody new come into your life? Oh, you must have karmic ties. Did somebody hurt you or do wrong by you? Well, don't worry, they're going to get their karma for sure. Some unpleasantness happening? Don't worry, that's just old karma. I mean, do you have generational karma, ancestral karma, past life karma? You may have karmic cycles that you're not even aware of. You might want to clear your karma, but don't worry, because all of your sacrificing is definitely going to bring in your good karma as long as you learn your karmic lesson. Sheesh. Karma is a huge and complex topic that's being used all over the place, and it can have a lot of different layers happening vibrationally around it, depending on how you think about it and how you're using it. But it's proliferated to such a degree, it's so popular amongst everyone that I really think it's worth taking a look at it and diving into it a little bit more deeply. So let's get into it. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm Kat, and this is Vibrational You, where we talk about common or popular spiritual practices and concepts and break them down on a more vibrational level so we can really get into what practices feel right and pass the vibe check for you personally. I'm a big believer that there are as many paths as there are people walking them. So there's no right or wrong. It's just what works for you personally in your practice. All right. Now, as I'm sure most of you are probably already aware, karma originates out of certain Eastern religious traditions and proliferated through East Asia from India originally, and then made the jump across the pond into a lot of Western spiritual traditions in the 60s or so. In short, the concept is that all of our actions, everything we do, have a moral measurement to them, whether good or bad, and that one way or another, whatever we do or we're responsible for putting out into the world is what we're going to get back out of it. It's essentially an Eastern version of what goes around comes around, and it's basically an atonement structure. For anybody who's already working with law of attraction and manifestation principles, the idea of what we put out into the universe is what we get back or attract back to ourselves is going to sound really familiar. It's a similar vibrational concept, which is why I think it works and meshes so well with the spiritual community. The main difference in the concepts is where the law of attraction really deals more with the vibration that you're putting out regarding yourself and what you believe about your own life and your own prosperity. Karma really has more to do with your action in the world, how you behave and treat other people, and what your intentions are towards others. So rather than, say, I feel great and amazing about myself, and I know that I'm going to be prosperous, attracting prosperity to you. It would be more, I treat others great and with respect, and I'm generous to them. So I know that if I put generosity out there to other people, then the universe will be generous to me in return. It's more of that kind of a concept. The concept of karma also shifted to the consequences potentially happening to you because of a previous life, or the reward or punishment, so to speak, happening to you in the next life. And I think that predominantly the reason for that is, unfortunately, I think, as it's pretty clear, bad people don't always get their comeuppance. And sometimes really good, deserving people who spend their whole lives giving and being generous and being of service can spend their whole lives struggling and suffering. Um, Unfortunately, I think most people know that it's possible to be an amazing person who is caring and of service and very loving, and still have bad feelings about themselves, right? In fact, it's more common than I wish it was. And it's also, I think we could, I'm not going to say anybody in particular, but I think we could all think of instances of people who are complete POS people who still, for whatever reason, feel amazing and confident and expectant, entitled in their own vibration about themselves. So, unfortunately, the comeuppance don't always happen in an observable life cycle, right? I mean, I'm just being honest, right? Shit. I hate saying stuff like that. Man, amazing people, brilliant people, kind people, generous people, start feeling better about yourselves. I love you so much. The world would be such a different place. Serious. Man, this is a lot. I need a Pop Tart. So, because the effects of karma are not always immediately observable, the concept gets pushed off into what happens when we die. Just like in Christianity, where if you're a bad person, you get to go to hell. If you're a good person, you get to go to heaven. But that's going to happen after you die, because unfortunately, it's always been the observable truth that uh, bad people don't always lose and good people don't always win, unfortunately. However, atonement structures of this way have always served like a huge energetic purpose for society in general. It serves to it serves to help keep things under control, people behaving generously, and helps to keep people who would otherwise act monstrous without any sort of thought process at bay. So those types of thought processes and vibrations have always served their purpose and served them well in society. Now, that is the way that karma was being used originally, and it's still possible to interpret karma in that way, and that what you're doing right now is going to affect your future life. But I think it's by far not as common to think of karma in terms of the life you will be living in the future, so much as it is used in most modern spiritual contexts, referring to your current life you're living right now and your experiences being the result of some sort of karma from a past life. By and large, it's usually being discussed in terms of energetic connections that are still attached to you or playing themselves out in some way from a past life rather than how your actions now are affecting a future life. How that type of a concept can impact our personal vibrational output really depends on how we're interpreting it and working with it. Um, in many cases, it can be really beneficial to think of some of life's hardest moments in terms of karmic lessons. What can we learn and grow from something rather than feeling just hurt and helpless? Anytime we can move ourselves out of suffering and into more of a contemplative process vibrationally, it can help move us towards healing and higher emotional concepts. So I really think it can be helpful in that way. It also, believe it or not, it can be helpful if you believe that the people who have wronged you or hurt you are gonna get their karma for that. Um, it can actually be helpful to think of it in that way if it's helping you to let go of anger and resentment and move forward with things. If you believe you can just let the universe take care of those guys and let it go and move on, I think that's also a really helpful way to be using karma vibrationally to help move yourself up the emotional scale. Where karma can get a little bit tricky vibrationally is if we get into believing that we have to make sacrifices for other people, or just in general, in order to get good karma to come into our lives, or if we are heavily believing that we have karmic ties to other people that have to be worked through, or that everyone that comes into our life has some karmic tie to us from a previous life. I think that that can get a little bit tricky as a vibration, just insofar as if that's the belief that we're consistently putting out vibrationally, it's possible to actually continue to attract people to ourselves who are in need of having something worked through, or um, needing a bunch of sacrifice within that relationship. So I think that that type of a vibration can actually be causing karmic cycles rather than actually resolving them. I think it's also possible that if it's our belief that we need to make sacrifices for something good to happen, either with people or in situations like maybe a work situation, it's possible that we end up staying stuck in a situation for longer than we might have otherwise if we believe that there's some sort of predestined karmic tie to it or something that we need to work through about the situation. For me, I like to think of being of service to others and sacrificing for others as two completely different vibes. We're of service to others when who we are and our natural inclinations and our natural actions are of benefit to other people. When we sacrifice for other people, I feel like that's when we are giving something up in a more begrudging sort of fashion for somebody else in anticipation of some future payoff, whether that's emotionally from a person or financially in a work situation, whatever we're sacrificing for. And I think that that can like breed low key resentment, right? Which is not not an optimal vibration in really any situation. Just like any concept, I think karma, whether or not it's beneficial or not vibrationally for you, really depends on how you're working with the concept and how you're using it in your experience. I do think that it's perfectly fine and normal to pick and choose what parts of it you think work for you and which parts of it you really think don't. For myself personally, I totally believe in other lifetimes. And I know that some of the people that I know or have come across in my life are people that I have known in other lifetimes. But I don't, for me, I don't put too much emphasis on that or what that means in this lifetime because I like to feel like I'm crafting my experience as I go, and that honestly, that experience can be whatever I want it to be. So it really just depends on how you roll with it and what feels right and good for you to work with personally. I think really, if I have any really important vibrational takeaway from considering all of this, it would be to say, don't wait for your karma to come in to start believing that you deserve everything that you want in life. All of the good, amazing, generous people who are out there being of service and being loving to one another deserve everything that they want and more in this lifetime. And hopefully, if more of us can start really believing that, then it's possible that more good people of service can become rich and powerful and influential. And I think that would be an amazing thing to see happen. But at the end of the day, it's not what I think about karma that matters. It's what you think about it that really matters for you and your vibration. I hope that this was helpful for you, that you were able to do your own personal vibe check on some of these concepts and thought processes, or at the very least, that it was thought provoking. And if you have comments or thoughts and feelings on karma, go ahead and drop them. I love to see them. And check back with me because we are going to be going over more common spiritual concepts and practices and examining them on a vibrational level. Thanks.